Hello, lovely people. Today we will be discussing a topic that is kind of, I wanted to say exotic, which is infinite baffle. I don't want to say infinite baffle subwoofers because we'll be talking about woofers, mid basses as well. In my car, if you're following me, I have infinite baffle subwoofer and mid bass. So I'm by no means an expert, but I would like to shed some light on Infinite Baffle because I was experimenting with it a lot. So probably you know Pizza from PS Sound that launched IB Madness all over YouTube, and like 9 out of 10 cars that he does have an Infinite Baffle subwoofer, and most of them have Infinite Baffle mid basses as well. So I just wanted to clear some stuff because there is a lot of questions, a lot of stuff people don't understand, or maybe it's a bit confusing. So I will try to uh, share with you as much as I know. And if anything I will mention in this video is incorrect or you disagree with me, please feel free to comment because I'm not perfect. I might make mistakes as well. So we will be looking at three main questions: what, how, and why. So what is Infinite Baffle? How does it work? We're going to be looking at some install photos. I have a whole album. I know pictures is very nice to look at, so I do have some pictures to share. Uh, we will be talking how to choose a driver, what specs to look for, because this is a very debatable topic. People don't know how to choose infill baffle subwoofer, so we're going to be talking about that. That's for me to remember. So I made this just like as a guide for myself, not to remember stuff, not to forget. Sorry, not to forget stuff. And why do we need that infinite baffle, or why would we want the infinite baffle? This is at the end, like pros and cons of infinite baffle. Let's say. So let's start at the beginning. What is an infinite baffle? Infinite baffle is basically a baffle that is infinite in size. So this is a theoretical loudspeaker alignment. And the purpose of the baffle is to separate the front wave that comes from the cone from the back wave that comes from the back of the speaker. So straight up, I will mention the fact that when you're mounting an infinite baffle speaker, subwoofer or mid bass, it doesn't really matter if the cone is facing towards you or the magnet, the motor is facing towards you, because for the low frequencies that these are playing from both sides, the sound is identical. The only difference you might hear if you have a poor quality driver, and you might hear some motor noise when it moves. It might be like, I don't know, chuffing or like through cooling vents or stuff. You might have some noise, but with quality drivers, you're not going to have any of those issues. So cone facing towards you or magnet facing towards you, it doesn't matter how you mount it. And you're going to see a lot of photos where it's mounted either that, both ways. So in cars, this is a small picture. In cars, we can achieve infinite baffle in few ways. So for the subwoofer application, basically what's happening is you want to have the car, interior of the car, as a box, and the driver, one side of the driver playing into that box, into the car, and the other side is playing outside of that box. So there are a few ways to achieve it. In this picture specifically, we're going to look at some actual photos, but in this picture specifically, it's what it's called trunk baffle. So there's kind of two infinite baffles, I want to say, like the fake one, which is called the trunk baffle, in which your subwoofer is using the trunk or boot space as a box, as an enclosure, and it plays into the cabin. And there's true infinite baffle where you cut a hole in the car, on the sides, on the back, on the bottom, and you vent the subwoofer out. So big, huge disclaimer. True infinite baffle setups are illegal in most countries because you're not allowed, especially like in European countries, you're not allowed to cut or modify like the body of the car in any way. And this potentially you can fail an MOT, like, you know, stuff happens. But there are ways how to work around it. So one thing to mention is true infinite baffle versus trunk baffle. Depending on the driver, the trunk baffle might not perform as infinite baffle. So subwoofers play in infinite baffle application when the volume behind the driver is more than, some people say 4 VAS, some people say 10 VAS. So the VAS is the TS parameter of the subwoofer or any kind of driver. And like if for example you have 100 liters VAS, so if the trunk is more than 400 liters, it's gonna play as infinite baffle. If you have 2 or 4 subwoofers, they might play as in a sealed box, so you won't have that low end extension and stuff. So yeah, VAS and trunk space might influence if the subwoofer is in true infinite baffle. But if you have a small subwoofer like a 1/8 inch or a 10 inch, it's gonna be like in true infinite baffle. But true infinite baffle, it has to vent outside. You have to cut a hole. So let's have a look at some pictures. So the parts, we're gonna look at some parcel shelf. Sorry, partial shelf subwoofers, the baffle behind the seats, and the actual cut holes. So this is probably the oldest style of infinite trunk baffle application, in which you have a parcel shelf. So this is like in, it's not in trucks, it's like in sedans and in cars that have like a trunk or boot space. If you have like a hatchback where you don't have a parcel shelf and just like a plastic shelf, that is not going to work. You need like a true infinite baffle for that. So I have a hatchback and I need to cut a hole in it. So if you have this, you can cut like a bigger hole or 2 holes and mount subwoofers in the shelf. So this is, for example, a picture. There's like a baffle, probably from MDF, and you have two 12 inches probably firing up into the cabin, and the hole inside of the trunk is like oversized seal enclosure. So one thing, in theory, if we go back to this infinite baffle and sealed application is exactly the same. It's just the volume is different. Yeah. So this is one of the applications. Now the second one is where you have subwoofers mounted on a baffle behind the seats. So again, same, is just you can mount bigger subs because on the parcel shelf you cannot mount 15s, 18s. But like in this application, you probably could fit 2 18s. And for infinite baffle, cone is king. We're going to talk about this later why. So behind the seats, this is how it looks like from the front. You can drive with seats closed or open, it doesn't matter. But the main thing to note about this is that the baffle that you're making has to be airtight. So you have to somehow mount it very, very rigid, because people who make these baffles, they make it like an inch and a half thick, maybe it's 2 inches thick, extremely thick, so they wouldn't flex. And you have to bolt them somehow and seal all the edges, because if you have any kind of air leaking through, it's not going to act as infinite baffle and you will have some problems in the response. So it has to be extremely tightly sealed. Now, so this is like in a typical car. I know Americans love trucks. So this is an example of a truck that was done by Pizza in PS Sound. So this is Volkswagen Amarok, and he fitted 2 18s, acoustic elegance, and basically he cut a hole in the bed, as you can see, and it's kind of a, if you shut the tailgate, it's kind of a trunk baffle, but if you open it or a window or whatever, it's true infinite baffle. So it's kind of, but this is, I know people in America do like, it's called a blow through, where you have like a box on the side and a hole cut. It's like a blow through. So this is similar, it's just a bigger hole cut. So this is how it looks like from inside of the cabin. Magnets facing towards you, and again, as I mentioned, it doesn't matter where the magnets are facing for those lower frequencies. And this is the whole finished product. It looks amazing. They have, like, I don't know, many videos and photos about this build, so if you want to check it out, check it out. So this is for trucks. Now, a very typical true infinite baffle application is just literally cut a hole where your spare tire is. You're cutting a hole as big as you can, then you bolt a baffle and you bolt a speaker in that place. So with this application, you can make as big a hole as you want. So let's talk about holes, hole size. I did an experiment with checking how big of an opening you should have for infinite baffle, true infinite baffle applications. And I did impedance sweeps and frequency response measurements. And I came to the conclusion that the hole should be more than 50% of the cone size. If you have less, then the hole acts as a tiny, big and shallow port, and it doesn't really work nice. So it has to be bigger than 50% of the cone area. So you bolt it in and you have an infinite baffle. This is a view from the bottom in the hole. So like Peter's Honda looks the same from the bottom. I mean, it's not this car, but it looks like that. And what you need to think about when you have true infinite baffle is some protection for the drivers. So usually what people put is PA style foam, which is like hydrophobic. It repels water. It's used for outdoors PA systems. And you kind of sandwich that foam in between, maybe like if you have like a grill or something, like a metal grill, and just to make sure that there's no water coming through, but the sound can easily pass through the foam and the driver can breathe easily. There is another picture, but I don't have it here, where people fitted exactly the same way a 24-inch driver with the magnet facing down, and that magnet is literally hanging here. There's no like foam, nothing, but the magnet is hanging. So, it's debatable, but protection is always advised. When you need more cone area and you cannot cut a bigger hole, you do like a manifold. So Peter in his Honda has same style manifold. So this is like, I think, I don't know, maybe 215s. I think these are bigger, 218s or something like that. So it's just a manifold, and you have a square or round hole cut at the bottom. So with this, the only thing you have to be careful a little bit, as I mentioned, the cone area versus opening ratio. Like if you would have cone area like 30 or 40% of both of these cones, then you might have some problems in the response. So just to make sure, if you want to do like a manifold, you can literally put 4 drivers or 3 drivers, as many as you want, but you have to make sure that the opening at the bottom is big enough for the drivers to breathe. So like a manifold. Then the other way, if you cannot cut, because this hole at the bottom, yeah, it's extremely visible, especially when you do like MOTs and stuff. So the other way how to do it is to cut a hole behind the rear bumper. So I don't know if you will be able to imagine. So this is the spare wheel. It lies here, the spare wheel. And this, you can see, is the rear bumper. So my application is exactly the same as this. There's another Vauxhall, I think the guy is from Australia. So this is a manifold, a box to fit, I believe he has an 18-inch Dayton Ultimax. And you have a cut. Again, I'm going to mention Peter from PS Sound. The Audi TT that he did for Chris has the same principle, cut behind the bumper, and a manifold. So the advantage of this is the hole, you cannot see it because like from outside, if you're doing a vehicle inspection, you cannot see the hole. So like in my car, the same, you literally cannot see the hole, especially when you cover it with foam black and it's dark, it's invisible. And you have infinite baffle. So this is where the trunk closes, and this is behind the rear bumper. You can make it a bit bigger, you know. Another way where you can do it in the boot is on the side. So this is a very unique, and that's why I want to show it, because I never seen anyone do anything like this. So this is a very unique application. So this is on the side. It's not in the middle, it's on the side. And here there's a manifold, and here it's a hole. So this is the view from the bottom. And basically he cut a hole on the side. So there's nothing structural or anything. It's just a corner, because here on this side, you usually have, I don't know how they call the flap vents, where you have like one on each side of the car. It's for like air conditioning, and when you shut the doors, it kind of flaps. So when you have like big subwoofers moving a lot of air, these are flapping a lot. So he just cuts a big massive hole in there. And this is how it looks like. So this is his daily driver. I think it's an 18-inch. Yeah, mounted on the side, and he has loads of space for other stuff, old school. Yeah, so this is on the side. So 3 applications for true infinite baffle. So this instead of spare wheel, behind the bumper and on the side. Now let's talk about mid-bass. So subwoofer is one. You can do infinite baffle subwoofers, and as well you can do infinite baffle mid-bass. So this is a very typical mid-bass for BMWs. So BMWs have mid-bass. This is a view from under the seat. This is a seat tilted, and you have those shallow mount under seat subwoofers. Usually they play in a small sealed box. Sometimes you can open up into the side sill to have some more breathing space, or you can literally cut a hole through from the other side. So this particular gentleman, he was experimenting. He made a lot of tiny holes, and I think he's gonna make one big hole as well. So if you, again, visible, not visible, if you have an under tray for the engine bay, under tray, that plastic bit is going all over this part and you cannot see it. But if you don't have an under tray, it will be visible, and you might have problems with MOTs. But that's the way to do it. You just literally cut a hole and mount a driver in there under seat. Yeah. Now, other cars, they don't have mid-basses, factory mid-basses under the seat, but people still cut. So like Adam, if you check his webpage, Facebook page for Corsa Orange Fanta, he had 9.5-inch woofers under the seat, and a lot of people put like 8-inch woofers. Even if it's not factory, they literally just cut a hole in there or make a small manifold and just make them breathe from under. So this is under the seats. Now let's go into the kicks. This is a lovely install done by Nigel. This is a woofer, I think it's an 8-inch, and this is the view from the side of the car. So this is the kick from the inside, and this is the view from outside. So this is next to the wheel well, and basically this breathes outside behind the how's it called, fender, whatever. And basically you need to make sure that trim the fender is deadened and it lets breathe, and you have much more cone, much more area opening than you need for that specific driver. But this is one way, just to vent it to the side. I saw one guy in BMW as well. He had big kicks, and he basically cut a big hole here on the side as well to vent it outside. And this is from inside, fully installed. Looks amazing. You literally cannot see. Again, so this you won't be able to see. It's like stealth and hidden, and from inside it looks like maybe like sealed pods. Now, this is on the right side. Again, this is Adam's Corsa when he was experimenting with stuff. So he cut a hole into the side sill. And on my car, in my Insignia, I had exactly the same, a tiny bit different, but the same location, same principle. I cut a hole into the side sill and I tried to play the driver like in the side sill, because in some cars, these sills run all like down and up and they're open. In my Insignia, there's like a section there and a section there. So in my specific case, it was like maybe 2-3 liter sealed box, but for him he has open sills, so for him it acts kind of a almost IB. But what you can do, you can cut a hole like straight in front. So in this case the hole was cut on to the side, but here you can cut a hole straight up through the wheel well, and that is exactly what I did in my car. I have a side sill on this and a hole cut in front, and that becomes IB. And when it's behind the wheel well, you have wheel well arch liner, and again you cannot see it. And this is when the trim panel goes back in. Yeah, this is the door, and basically the speaker is there on the same level with the door. Okay, now this is again same PS sound. Peter did the Amarok, and here you have a hole cut in the same place like here, just a bit next to this, like in this part. And what's interesting and special about this install is he was installing 2 mid-bass driver on each side, so it had 4 mid-bass drivers. That's why the hole is kind of weird shaped and long. And as you can see, 2 drivers on this side, and on the other side as well, big hole behind the wheel well, and 2 drivers. And basically this is the final look. If you look at the bottom here, there's 1 driver, there's 2, so 2 6.5-inch drivers in the kick, in true Infinite Baffle application. Now, front subwoofers. So we can do rear subwoofers, we can do mid basses, and as well we can do front subwoofers. We're going to talk about front subwoofers and why we need them a bit later on in general. But this is again Adam's Corsa, where he has cut a hole in front of almost firewall. You can see some suspension components there, and there's a subwoofer installed. So with this, because people like to put front subwoofers, but they make a sealed enclosure either instead of the glove box or like here in front, but you're losing a lot of space. But with this application, you're not losing any space, because all what you need is a baffle that's like in front and the driver in there. So it saves a lot of space. And this is one. And the other one is something like this. So this is central in the middle of the car. This is the gear stick. Mid basses, again, Infinite Baffle mid bass. And this is the front subwoofer in IB. So this is one, and this is the other one, made by Lee from Platinum. I believe it's a Golf. And basically, as you can see, big hole cut, a ring. There's how they called cables for the linkages for gear stick, and at the bottom this pipe is the exhaust. So he did, I don't have pictures to show, but he did a lot of modifications to shield the subwoofer from heat, and he has like a big grill for protection, but I don't have it here. And basically he put the subwoofer there. So this is like a sandwich. You see that there's the grill that goes in between. It's not like a subwoofer cone directly into the exhaust. He has a lot of stuff done under this one. And when everything is done, it's very stealth and hidden, just like that. You cannot see. And here he has hybrid audio in IB kicks as well. So all front system IB. And this subwoofer you cannot see. So this is one of the ways how you can do. And if you say that Infinite Baffle is for like SQ guys that doesn't have a lot of output or anything. So this is one guy that did four 24-inch subs in True IB. This is from the back. This is from the inside. And I think he wanted to upgrade to 5, but he literally cannot fit anything. Yeah, so this is stereo integrity, 24-inch sub. And the Audi that I mentioned before, Audi, that car has 124 and this has 4. So I think this car is breaking some records. But yeah, Infinite Baffle is not only for SQ. You can do SPL with it as well. It's just you have to really know what you're doing. Okay, so this is the part with pictures done. I'm just gonna double check with this. How to install? Okay, how to choose a driver. So now we're gonna go into some technical stuff. So the pretty pictures are over. Now we're gonna dive deep into technicalities. I have a software, VTUXCAD. It has an simulation box simulator. So it's similar to WinISD, but this allows me to choose Infinite Baffle. So it has close, base reflex, and Infinite Baffle. So let me to model responses of drivers in Infinite Baffle. And when it gives me SPL stuff, we will be looking at excursion. Yeah, we're not going to be looking at anything else, but we're going to look at excursion. So how do you choose a driver for Infinite Baffle? Let's talk about subwoofers. Here I have a few different subwoofers. So I have Acoustic Elegance, IB AU15, which is one of the most popular ones that I believe is this model that Peter uses all the time, but he uses like 18-inch and stuff. Then we have, just for fun, JL12W7, SQL15, because all of the people are recommending this one. I have here my subwoofer, FI IB315. This is dedicated Infinite Baffle subwoofer. And just for fun, I added Alpine Type X, which I had, and I have measurements of this subwoofer. So that's why I'm showing it to you. And as well, I have two midbasses. We're going to talk about midbasses a bit later. So subwoofer, some of them are designed to be in Infinite Baffle and some are not. One of the few characteristics that tells you if the subwoofer is designed or it can work with Infinite Baffle is this one, is QTS. So QTS is basically what it shows you. It kind of shows you the roll-off of the driver, natural roll-off of the driver, and how it behaves in lower frequencies. So higher QTS drivers like this one, let's say for example FI has a QTS of 0.76, and it kind of rolls off as a second order. I think it's a second order, or is it 24 dB? I'm not sure. Comment below. It rolls off as like a crossover. And if I choose this one, QTS SB17, QTS of 0.28, as you can see, it has a much shallower roll off. Yeah, so it doesn't roll off very fast. It kind of plays, it doesn't roll off. And high QTS drivers, they kind of almost, not drops off a cliff, but kind of almost drops off a cliff. And that's why they have better control if you let them play all the way down. So let's forget about SPL. Let's have a look at excursion. I'm gonna double click. Yeah, so this is excursion depending on power. Yeah, so this specific driver is designed to be in Infinite Baffle application, and it takes power 600 watts. If I apply 600 watts, enter, this subwoofer as well has 35 mils of Xmax, and as you can see, it goes all the way up. So this is excursion depending on frequency. And if I feed this subwoofer full rated power, 600 watts, it's not gonna go over Xmax. Yeah, it's not gonna bottom out at 10 hertz. It still has 34 millimeters Xmax. I could potentially feed it a bit more, maybe like 700 watts. Yeah. So with 700 watts, it's gonna play nicely down to 17 hertz. And then it's gonna, if I'm gonna play something lower than that, it's gonna go over X max. But in general, with rated power, 600 watts, it's very well behaved driver. Another driver that I have in this bunch that is specifically designed for Infinite Baffle is the Acoustic Elegance. If I choose this driver, now you can see it goes over just because it's not rated for that. Let me take 40 watts. Yeah. So this driver has an QTS of 62 and it's rated at 500 watts. So 500 is the thermal limit, yeah? If I apply 40 watts, it has an X max of, I think it's like 18 mil. So I can probably 60, even 70. There you go. So with 70 watts, it doesn't need a lot of power. These subwoofers, Acoustic Elegance, they're really, really light. They have, if you have a look at CMS and VAS, so VAS is almost 400 liters. They're extremely, extremely soft suspension, and they very high sensitivity, and they don't need a lot of power. So with this, with 70 watts, you're displacing a lot of air, and it's not gonna bottom out until again 17 hertz, and then it kind of bottoms out. So this again is a well-behaved driver. It's just the only thing, it needs little power, very little power, but it's well-behaved driver. Let's have a look at, let's say this one, SQL15. So SQL15, as you can see, it's nice here. Let's give him some more power. It's rated, let's see, 1000 watts. If we put 1000 watts, it goes over X max. It shoots over X max. So see, like with the Acoustic Elegance, it went up and it went like this. With FI as well, and it went up and it went like this. But with drivers that are not designed for specifically Infinite Baffle, so this has a QTS of 0.42, the excursion shoots up. That's why they say that it's like it's not controlled. So let's put 600, even less than that, 500. Yeah, and you can see it shoots up like an arrow. And exactly the same with others as well that are not really designed. So QTS 0.48, it kind of shoots up as well. If you give them a bit more power, it shoots up. My Alpine, exactly the same. It just goes through the roof. So this Alpine, 0.56 QTS, let's bring it down 400 watts. So with 400 watts, it's rated 900. Or is it? Yeah, 900. And with 400, it goes over X max above 23. So let's say 300. Yeah. So it needs only 300 watts. Very little power, but the excursion again, it shoots up. Not as bad as the SQL, because SQL shoots up faster. It doesn't have. And just again for comparison, this, see, the excursion goes up and it kind of flattens. So that high QTS, what it does, it flattens the excursion at very low frequency, so you're not bottoming out the driver as easy. Yeah, so QTS. Another thing that you have to bear in mind is the cone area and Xmax. So this, if you multiply these two things, cone area and Xmax, you're going to have a displacement of the driver, because the driver in IB acts the same as in sealed enclosure. So you don't have any reinforcement from the port when you have ported. It's only the cone does the whole job. So what you need is to reach like SPL, to reach be loud, you need displacement. You need to displace a lot of air. And this is why I have this note for myself. 1 octave down, 4 times excursion. So to maintain the same level of SPL, yeah, let's take for example 40 hertz and 20 hertz. So for 40 hertz, if you're playing if the excursion at 40 hertz, let's say here 40 hertz, or is it 20, 30, 40 here, 10 millimeters, yeah, at 40 hertz. If I want to play the same loudness at 20 hertz, same loudness, the excursion will go up 4 times. So it has 10, so I need 40 mils of Xmax at 20 hertz if I want to keep the same level. Because here you can see the level drops. Like from 40, it drops 5 dB. So I need to increase that 5 dB to make it like flat. So the rule of thumb is half an full, if you want to play an octave lower on the same level, you need 4 times as more excursion. And that's why when choosing Infinite Baffle subwoofers, apart from QTS that you're looking at, you have to look at the displacement of air, not specifically Xmax, but displacement. So these, you can see they have a lot, like my FI has 34 mils, that's 28 mils, 30 mils, a lot of excursion, yeah? But if you combine lower excursion drivers like Acoustic Elegance, it has only 18 mil, yeah? So it's not a lot of excursion, but it has a massive cone. So that's why Peter, like when he did that Amarok that I showed you before, it has two 18s. So you compensate the lack of Xmax with cone area. Because if you have, like, let's take for example this Acoustic Elegance, yeah? So cone area 830, Xmax 18. This FI, same, almost same cone area, almost the same, but it has twice as much Xmax. So basically this FI plays as loud as two Acoustic Elegance 15s. Now, I'm not talking about quality, I'm not talking about distortion, I'm talking about pure raw output. Yeah. So that's why if you're like want a lot of bass and you're tight on space, choose a driver that has a lot of Xmax. If you don't care about space, if you have loads of space for loads of cone area, same when you saw these the manifolds, where is it? In the very beginning, these like manifolds. So this is cone area. Yeah, cone area, a lot of cone area. So it depends. Like if people again confuse sealed with IB, they think that IB for some reason plays not as loud as sealed, but in reality they play exactly the same loudness because the where is it? This one, yeah. So the sound comes in the front of the speaker and back as well. So for some reason, people think that if you have Infinite Baffle subs and they play up front, you're losing half of output that goes outside, but you're not. Because it's exactly the same in sealed enclosure where you're losing this half an output because it gets lost inside of the box. It's not reinforcing the front. It just makes it difficult to move. But the output is exactly the same as for sealed. That's why not necessarily cone area is king, but displacement is king. You want to have as much displacement as possible. So these are the subwoofers. Now let's talk about mid basses. Everybody say that, again, same. This is, I'm comparing two mid bass drivers, Hertz Milli Pro 6.5 inch and very different SB Acoustics SB17. So Hertz Milli Pro is QTS 0.56, which is designed for sealed or IB. It's designed for a door, yeah, so it's IB. And SB17 is designed for ported because it has a low QTS of 0.28. Now, people say that you cannot play like this with low QTS in IB application, you know, and I'm going to prove you wrong. So again, let's have a look at the excursion. So these drivers have very low excursion, like 6 millimeters, which is like this blue line. And as you can see, it's rated. So both of these rated for like 100 watts. Let's put 100 watts, just like that. And let's have a look at Hertz. So this one, again, very controlled. It goes over Xmax, yeah, quite a lot, but it's controlled. So let's apply less. Let's apply 30 less. So I don't want to go over X max. 20, 10. So playing 10 watts in this driver, if you don't apply any crossovers, it's not going to bottom out. It's going to play nice with 10 watts. If you do the same with the SB acoustics, it's bottoming out below 43 hertz on the same 10 watts. So like these drivers with low QTS, they can bottom out very easy without any crossover. So let's apply Linquist Riley 80 hertz crossover, 24 dB. Let's apply and look what happens with this excursion. If I apply the crossover, bam, it cuts it down. Exactly the same for this 4 hertz. So without, with, it cuts everything. And now I can increase the power to 100 watts. So this is under X max, 100 watts, controlled. And this driver that is not supposed to be using IB, crossed at 80 hertz, exactly the same, plays very, very nicely. So the conclusion is, depending on the combination of FS and QTS, you can use a driver that is not really designed for infinite baffle applications as long as you cross it higher than FS. If you cross it lower, then it's going to bottom out. So this 75 hertz FS and QTS normal, so it doesn't really affect the crossover, but for this one, it cuts the excursion down, see, by a lot. So using a proper crossover, you're kind of limiting the excursion. So you can indeed use a low QTS driver as long as you cross it at least 2 times FS. Yeah, you can. Now, you might think, what is the point if I have this driver, like 6-inch driver, and I cross it at 80 hertz? What is the point? Why should I? So now we come to why. Why do we want infinite baffle application? Why do we do it? So first reason, I'm going to add one as well, because I just remembered. First of all, there's no box coloration, no nothing. So if you have a subwoofer in a sealed application, the box, a lot of people say, plays kind of its own thing. You have to make the box extremely rigid for it to not to resonate and not to impact the sound. Because if you have a box like in here, and you have the back wave bouncing in the box, it has standing waves, it can do like box resonances and stuff. If you get rid of that box, you get rid of all of those problems and you have no coloration from the box. So that means that sound, it's much cleaner, it's much nicer. Second thing, efficiency. So as you saw from these, with some subwoofers, you don't need any power. Like with this, all you need is 100 watts to play. They're extremely efficient. Yeah, because you don't have the box that does the compression. You don't need, for sealed application is in a box, you need the most power. For IB, you don't need any power. You can run your subwoofers on very little power, and exactly the same for the mid basses. You need very little power, so efficiency. Another thing is rigid mounting. So in these pictures, when you saw, for example, it's mainly for the mid bass. So imagine mid bass mounted like this versus in a door. So this, what he has here is steel plates, and basically this mounting, it's much more sturdier than the one in the door, because doors, as much as you deaden them, they will resonate, they will vibrate stuff. But here, like in the kicks or on the seats, where you have this one, it's such a rigid mounting that nothing is vibrating and the driver just plays. So that's an extra added benefit for this one. Location, we're going to have a look at frequency response in REW. So this location, low end extension, beta integration. This is going to be from the frequency response that we're going to have a look now. I have a few videos made where I explain how location, how frequency response depend on the location. So like if you have mid-bass in the doors, you will have problems. So let's me explain this. Here I have a typical house curve with crossover points at 80, 300, and 3K. So we're gonna ignore the tweeters and we're gonna ignore the mid-ranges. Mid-bass. Let's remove the subwoofer as well. Okay, so this is the target response that I want from my mid-bass. When I had my speakers in the door, in the driver's side door, there is what is called like a null. And here's the response that I should match to the target. And as you can see, it would be extremely difficult to do because of this massive hole. And here that the driver below 80 Hertz drops off like of a cliff, and there's a massive cancellation here as well. So by moving the drivers into the kicks, not necessarily doing IB, but moving to the kicks, I change the driver response to this. So this is exactly the same driver, just playing in the kick, but where is the picture? Where is Adams? Like this, where I have it sealed in this small little space. So it's like it acts like in a small sealed box. So that's why you have this massive peak, small sealed box, massive peak. But as you can see, there's no cancellations. Like this whole thing is gone. So this is one of the advantage of the location, not necessarily AB, but the location. You don't have any cancellations in the bandpass that you want to use. But now there's a problem. I don't have any low end. Like here below 90 Hertz, it drops like off a cliff, and I don't have any low end. So what I do, I need to open that hole and to have more lower end extension. So if I do that, exactly the same location, exactly the same driver, I'm gonna open the hole and bam, that's what you get. I have a small cancellation here for some reason, but the low end is there. So if you compare in the doors and in the kick with IB, you have much more level at the bottom end and much cleaner response. So it's not perfect, but it's much easier to work with, and you can apply crossovers, you can match the target shape like spot on. So the advantage of Infinite Baffle applications for the subwoofers and for mid-basses is extended lower end, where you have much more low end compared to a sealed application, and that helps you to integrate the drivers and to have a better slope for better integration. Okay, let me just double check. Better location, low end extension, and better integration. Yeah. So the need for the front sub. So before we talk about front subs, we not need to talk about the subwoofer response in Infinite Baffle. So this is in the kicks. Yeah. The main thing in the kicks, you have better response because of the location, because it's in the kicks, and because you have much more low end. Now let's talk about subwoofers. Let me remove this mid-bass. You still with me? 49 minutes. If you're still with me, congratulations. Not far to go. Okay, this is an example of my Alpine subwoofer, the one that I did. This model, this one. So it's kind of 0.56. It can work in Infinite Baffle, but it goes over Xmax fast. So this is the driver in 1.5 cubic feet sealed box. Let me just put this up like this. So this is a sealed box, yeah? This is the same driver in slightly different location. That's why you have like this difference. And for some reason, I think it's just an inaccurate measurement. But this is a slightly smaller box, 1 cubic foot, which I have in the place where I meant to do infinite baffle. So behind the bumper where I cut the hole. So you can see very similar. So I'm just going to remove this. Just for comparison, this is a ported. It's tuned very low, like 27, 26 hertz. So this is a ported. And a lot of people say that ported boxes don't play high. They play exactly the same as sealed. They just have a bit more the tuning frequency and it then drops off. So just for fun. And then this is exactly the same subwoofer, exactly the same location, exactly the same place in Infinite Baffle. So when I open the hole, you can see I'm gaining 10 dBs of output at 20 hertz, 7 dBs at 30 hertz. So this is the extended low end, exactly the same as we had with the mid bass. When you open it, you have much more low end. So this is a driver that's kind of designed for Infinite Baffle. You can use it, same like you can use some others mentioned here, like stereo integrity, SQL15, like some GL subs, that kind of stuff. So it's kinda. But if you compare this to a dedicated Infinite Baffle subwoofer, my FI 315, you have this. And as you can see, you have even more low end, so another 10 dB at 25 hertz plus compared to the Alpine. And if you compare the Alpine in sealed versus FI, it's like almost 18 dB difference at the bottom end. So again, you can see that the top end is exactly the same. It didn't change. It's the same for ported, it's the same for IB. The subwoofer plays as high as it always played. The only difference is at the bottom end that the IB is much more efficient at the bottom end. And then what happens, this and this. And then what happens, if you want to match the target curve of the subwoofer, which is here, like this, yeah? So for sealed, what I need to do, I need to cut this peak by like 10 dB, and then I have it matching down to 25 hertz. It's going nice like this. But if I take this FI, it's really not smart to cut all of this. So with FI, I need to bring down the level. So let's bring down the level. Let's bring down by minus 18. 18. And here you have. So I have it a bit more, baby. Just like that. So again, if you remember, this is the same driver that plays as high as the Alpine in sealed. However, I need to bring down the level because it has so much gain at the top end and it matches down to 20 hertz. I just need to cut this little peak. But here you can see it looks like it plays only up to 46 and then it drops. But in reality, you saw that it plays as same as this one. It just has much more level. So with Infinite Baffle subwoofers, when you have this problem, like here you have a really a lot of gain below, like in here, then you don't have level here. And if I put like mid bass target like this, so I can make my mid basses play like this, but here between like 45 and 80 is gonna be a gap. Yeah, and it's not because the Infinite Baffle subwoofer doesn't play high, it's just because it has so much low end that you need to bring it down and then the slopes falls. So this is the main reason why you need a front subwoofer or front mid bass drivers that can play very low down to like 50 hertz. So a typical, even this in the Kick IB, typical 6.5, like in this, it could play Like it has a response, but 6.5 driver is not gonna play nicely down to 50 hertz and it's gonna bottom out very fast. So that's why you need a really capable 8-inch, two 8 inches that could play that low to cross at 45, 50, or you need a front sub. So this is the reason why most cars with infinite baffle subwoofers need a front subwoofer as well. Okay, let me check this. Yeah, I think I'm done with everything. We are 55 minutes in, just under an hour. I think I'm gonna cut it here. Um, if I missed something, if I didn't explain something very well, or if you have something to add, again, please comment under the video, under the post, wherever you want. And I just hope that this, as Peter says, infinite baffle madness reaches more people, and it's going to be a bit more easier to understand when I showed you like the RTA graphs and I showed you like excursion with everything. I hope it's going to be a bit more easier to understand. I hope that you will be able to choose the driver easier and understand what you're choosing and why you're choosing, and then understand the reasons behind why we do what we do with Infinite Baffle. So yeah, cut more cars, install more subwoofers, install more mid basses, cut, choppy, choppy, choppy. Thank you very much for watching, guys. I will see you in the next one.